You may think that most of our medical treatments have been shown to reduce disease and death, but many of them have only been tested via surrogacy. And no, I don't mean baby mamas. In the context of a clinical trial, a surrogate endpoint is defined as a measurement that can substitute for a clinical endpoint, like the presence of heart disease. That surrogate is expected to predict either benefit or harm. What does that mean? Let's say we're interested in heart disease. Scientists may use cholesterol as a surrogate for heart disease. What it means is that if they observe cholesterol levels going down, they will infer that heart disease goes down as well. They will use one marker, the levels of cholesterol in the blood, to infer what is happening to a disease. Here's an everyday life example. The number of kilometers on the odometer of a car is a surrogate marker for how likely that car is to die tomorrow. Why do we use surrogate markers in research? Well, often the thing that we really want to measure, like heart disease, is too rare in the general population, would require too big of a cohort of participants to adequately measure, and would thus cost too much money. Surrogate markers also tend to be easier to measure. Taking your blood pressure is non-invasive and quick, but looking at the actual state of your arteries is quite inconvenient. On the surface, the argument for the use of surrogates may appear logical. The surrogate causes disease and death. Our intervention reduces the level of the surrogate. Therefore, our intervention reduces disease and death. Life, however, is much more complicated than this. A class of drugs called CETP inhibitors were once thought to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Why? CETP inhibitors reduce the amount of bad cholesterol in the blood and increase the amount of good cholesterol. And people with this combination have a lower risk for cardiac disease. Simple, right? Simple, but wrong. When this logic was actually tested, they found that these types of drugs would increase the good cholesterol, but either led to no significant improvement or increased the amount of deaths. Oops. True story number 2. A type of abnormal heart rhythm called ventricular arrhythmia causes sudden death. Now we have anti-arrhythmic drugs that can prevent ventricular arrhythmia. Do they prevent sudden death? In the cardiac suppression trial, a certain type of anti-arrhythmic drug actually increased sudden deaths. Oops again. Why do surrogates fail? Well, they don't always fail, but when they do, it's because the human body is incredibly complex. The relationship between the surrogate and the disease is hardly ever monogamous. Many variables can influence the surrogate, and many more can impact the disease. That is why good science communication will never generalize beyond what the research has actually shown. If a drug is strictly shown to lower blood cholesterol, we should never say that it will lower heart disease. Another reason surrogates may fail is regression to the mean. I made a whole video about it, which you can access here. If you're running a clinical trial and you want to enroll people whose surrogate marker is really high, you will end up enrolling patients who today happen to have an abnormally high level of that surrogate compared to a week ago. But that level will go back to its mean value during the trial, the same way that the symptoms of the flu go back to normal on their own. These patients will make it look as if your drug had an effect, but part of that effect is simply nature running its course. It's not easy to fix the problem of surrogate marker use in clinical trials. Scientists and pharmaceutical companies want easy measurements and small sample sizes. They want manageable trials. As it is, randomized clinical trials designed by industry, like pharmaceutical companies, focus on surrogate markers more than half of the time, whereas those designed without their input do so from 1/6 to 1/5 of the time. One proposed solution is to create stricter rules for drug approval that value hard endpoints like death a lot more than they do now. As it is, too much weight can be put on surrogate markers. Another way to help fix a problem? Talking about it. The more scientists write about this in the literature, the more awareness they will create. In a paper entitled Surrogate Endpoints in Heart Failure, the authors summarize quite intelligently how we should think about surrogate markers. To use only a surrogate endpoint is to accept as empirical evidence for clinical practice a hypothesis about health benefits that has never been tested. The use of surrogate markers represents a strong limitation of clinical research. When you hear of a new medical intervention, ask yourself, does it increase quality of life? Has it been shown to reduce deaths? Does it reduce the duration of the illness? Or was it shown to impact a surrogate marker instead? Does it reduce cholesterol levels, blood pressure? Does it improve progression-free survival? Are we taking a leap of faith?